Kate, I just want to say how instrumental Kate has been in the Choose Love movement. Not only you were talking about the compassionate touch program that you literally created for us using your experience, your vast amount of experience, movement to Livermore. And Livermore was one of the first communities to embrace this movement in the country, which is really exciting. This is just an extension of the conversation that we began. I think was it 3 or 4 years ago, Kate?
Yeah, it's got to be, I think at least 4 years ago when, you came and you started speaking, and then and gradually, we've been as the Choose Love movement has developed, we've been able to kind of embrace everything that's developed with it, along with the development. Yeah.
And I just want to give a shout out to your courageous leaders that had the courage to think differently than kind of what we've been doing. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is the definition of I think insanity. And a lot, that's why we're in the position that we're in. And what I've learned over the past almost 8 years now is that it takes courageous leadership to think in a different way, to kind of think outside the box, to do something differently. That's what Choose Love is. It's embraces social and emotional learning, but it's proactive and preventative. So in other words, instead of focusing on the issues, which a lot of what we do in our schools, homes, and communities, and we do this naturally from our negative bias, but a lot of that focuses on the problem. And when we focus on something, it grows. And what Choose Love does is it focuses on really the cause of a lot of the suffering. And therefore, it can be the solution when it is embraced. But it takes courageous leadership. It really does, because you know that you're going to hit resistance, and you know that it's going to take effort, and we only have so many energy reserves in one day. There's a finite amount. You wake up in the morning and you make choices all day long. Where am I going to put my energy? And this took up energy, and so it does take courageous leadership to keep it going. So I just want to shout out to Livermore that that's what I've seen in every area. And it's really been incredible to work with you all. So thank you, big gratitude. And I just definitely want to start out this with a big expression of appreciation and gratitude for the courageous leadership you all have. So you know what, I'll start with sharing my screen. Kate and I are gonna, and anybody, if you want to unmute at some point and make a comment, please do. We want to have this be a discussion. We're in an unprecedented time in our lives anyway, in our country, in your community, but in our country and in our world. It's a difficult time. And so we wanted to have this the disconnection and isolation that we're feeling to express ourselves and to talk about what we're feeling, but also kind of be reminded that this is a tremendous time for growth. This is what I show every time I speak. I show this tool belt. I literally have a tool belt when I'm at home, and I hold it up and I say that we all are born with this invisible tool belt around our waist, and we don't see it, we don't know about it, but we literally start putting in skills and tools from the time we're born. So like crying is a tool to get what we want. We get fed, we get our diapers changed. But then when we grow up a little bit, sometimes that tool doesn't work so well for us. So we might take that tool out of our belt and add a different tool. The essential life skills, tools, and attitudes that are taught through Choose Love, this programming that, by the way, is for everyone. We've expanded so much since we launched in Livermore, and I'm excited to share that with you all. These are skills and tools that we have every single day, and it's skills and tools that help us have meaningful connections, help us have healthy relationships, help us be able to self-regulate when we face difficulty and manage our emotions. There's skills and tools that help us make responsible decisions, and more. And here's the key thing about this: we have to learn them. We are not born with these skills and tools. We have to learn them. And so for too long, I think, yeah, okay, well, we learn all those essential life skills from our parents. Duh, right? But what if you're a parent that didn't learn the essential life skills? Because you have to learn them, and then you kind of have to practice them to a certain degree. So what if you're, and by the way, there's no judgment, because I was 44 years old following the murder of my 6-year-old son in his first grade classroom at Sandy Hook Elementary School. I'm researching a solution because I know that that is 100% preventable. But not just that, I know that that the other diseases of despair, and that includes alcoholism and substance abuse and suicide, of despair, are reducible and preventable. And so I set out to figure learning these skills and tools that help us grow through difficulty. And I was 44 years old when this happened. And once I came upon this, I was like just floored, because I mean, I was an investment banking. I'm a single mom supporting my 2 kids by myself, but I realized I was not socially and emotionally intelligent. So we had trauma in our household. We had a mentally ill family member, and it was very dramatic. We've had other things. I've been divorced, and I look back and I realized, oh my God, like how I reacted to these things. If I had had social and emotional intelligence, my household would have been different. Years old, but I can tell you this: I learned them as an adult. These are the same skills and tools we're teaching the kids through this program, and this is tools that your teachers are learning or have and use every single day, because we practice. It's not enough to have, you may be thinking, I know all this, I already have all these things, and you might, but you have to practice them as well, every day, all day long. And so these are the skills and tools we're going to be talking about a little bit today. They're management skills and tools, but you know, here's the thing. 8 years ago, well, like 7 years and I don't know, 9 months, 8 months, I thought I was creating this movement to keep our kids safe in school. Because if you think about it, well, 2018 was the deadliest year on record for school shootings. People don't realize that. We had 1 school-related shooting per week in our country when we went into lockdown. So 8 years ago, I'm going, we have to keep our kids and our educators safe. We absolutely have to. And by the way, you know, all of these external safety measures, Sandy Hook had them, by the way. Nobody follows them when there's a gunman on the loose, but they didn't work. They work to a certain extent. And I'm not saying they're not they're not very important. They're very important. I want them. I'm not saying they're not important, but what I'm saying is equally as important is internal safety measures that come from teaching social and emotional learning and choosing love. That is kids, cultivating kids that can have healthy connections and relationships, that can manage their emotions, that can grow through difficulty that they face in life and are resilient, that can make responsible decisions. Kids that have these skills and tools are not going to want to hurt other kids or them. Makes common sense. There's research behind it. So it's really important. But now I actually had, those aha moments that just, they shock you. I had an aha moment only a month ago, believe it or not. And I realized a month ago, oh my God, I created this really for one reason, but now it's the message. And we need it now more than ever. I actually created it for this moment. I didn't even realize this moment was coming, but this is what we need to survive and to thrive. And so I just want to move into this. When I say survival of
Scarlett, I think your internet connection's a little,
is it okay now?
yeah, you just froze for a little bit there. So we got survival of the, and then, then you went
Okay. Oh no, it wasn't freezing. That's what I did. I did it. Survival of the,
yeah,
I did that. I
I know you
froze
did, and then you
because I
actually
was waiting for a
froze.
response. And it's, well, perfect. It's survival of the fittest, right? That's what we know. Those are the bumper stickers on the back of cars. But here's the interesting thing. Darwin didn't actually say that. The famous evolutionist Darwin didn't conclude that. In his descent of survival of the most sympathetic, that would live to not only survive but thrive. And by sympathetic, he meant altruistic, generous, and compassionate. Wow, let's think about that for a minute, because that challenges what we've been told. It's not survival of the fittest, it's survival of the most loving. Because let's think about this. We need each other. Well, it starts right when you come out of the womb. You need your parents, but that continues. That connection is the absolute most important thing in our lives. But here's the thing. We're wired to connect. We're born with mirror neurons in our brains. So in other words, when I smile, even if you don't smile, it's so interesting. They did research and they had a man in an MRI machine. They asked him to smile. He was all hooked up, right? They were looking at his brain. And when he smiled, his brain, they saw the certain parts of his brain that lit up. Then they told him, don't smile. And then they showed him a picture of another person smiling. Guess what happened? The same parts of his brain lit up and he started releasing oxytocin and those other feel-good neurochemicals. Wow. So in other words, we're wired for connection because, as Darwin found, we need each other for our survival. But we're not born with the skills and tools to have those healthy connections. We have to learn them. And Kate, you wrote the Compassionate Connection program for us. It actually was revised from Compassionate Touch, which is so important. But you revised it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my background is in physical therapy. So for all of my working career, I've been using touch, and I know that that's an essential way that we make connection with one another. And so when Scott and I were talking, because we met many years ago, as Scarlett was developing the program, and I said, so how how is touch fitting in with this? And it was a missing component. And I think partly because it's not actually in any other social emotional learning program. And I think partly because there's a lot of taboo around it, and so people would rather not address it. But I think it's, if you think of through all of the ages of schooling, touch sort of runs through all that, and is a part of how we make strong connections. And we know that that's a vital part of our thriving and of our communication. There are times when we get so overwhelmed that we can't hear words anymore. Our brain starts to kind of shut down when we go into overwhelm, and words no longer are making sense to us, but we can relate to and understand touch. So I initially looked at that through the elementary, middle, and high school areas, and we did some videos on that and some worksheets. And then as we entered into COVID, where we started saying, "Oh, you can't hug," and so right at the beginning of this shelter in place, and it's like no hugging, like no touching, no handshakes, and we're all doing these elbow bumps and toe taps and all these different things. I was like, oh wow, that all this sort of development of this work, it's all gone down the drain. But the weird thing is, as we've moved through it, because we're kind of like 7 months in now, we're seeing a lot more discussion nationally about touch deprivation, how much people are missing it. And it's almost like, and it's exciting for me, because we're now getting, in the New York Times, we're getting in some articles, in these bigger publications, really discussing and looking at how important touch is as a form of connection. And we can make those connections in many ways. Like we can use those mirror neurons. I mean, oftentimes we'll be doing this, right? Sort of that air hug as a way of tapping into that. And we're seeing family members, or if we're in pods, having discussion about how do we touch? How do we navigate this? We're talking about what is consent. All of these are really, really important topics that we were kind of avoiding before. And now, as we're deeper into the shelter in place and there's more distancing, we're now having these discussions that are difficult. We need all of our social emotional skill set, all the tools that Scarlett was talking about, in order to navigate those well. So I've done some writing on blog posts on that on Medium, if any of you are on Medium blog posts, but because I think there's a real opportunity here that has showed itself as we're moving through this. So we did shift the name to Connection, and when Scarlett was creating, and her team were creating the Brave New World to return to school, I did some videos for elementary school children on looking at how do we connect even without using touch. How do we connect with one another, and also how do we ground and as a self-regulation tool, because all of those skill sets that can go in our tool belts, like how do we settle and calm ourselves through breath, through dropping into our bodies and feeling sensation in our bodies, is another way of connecting into the earth, is another way to begin to calm ourselves. And I think all of you, I think just probably everybody who's on right now is working with people who are really anxious. And so there's this anxiety around, and again, there's mirror neurons, right? We're relating to that. We all start to feed off one another. But one of the things I've learned through all the work that I've done is that if the teacher in particular is able to use these tools to calm and settle him or herself, the classroom begins to change. I mean, this will even be on Zoom too. It's kind of interesting. It's um, there's just some way in which we connect, no matter how we're talking to one another, whether it be um, thousands of miles away or in person. So it's like the largest pendulum in the room. So if we can become that grounding cord in a room, everybody else will start to orientate around it. And so that was one of the things that we did on the little videos that I did for Brave New World of returning to school.
That's incredible, Kate. And that's a really great point. That one of my slides you'll see says anxiety spreads faster than COVID. And this is one of the messages that I've been giving educators across the country, is that our communication, when you're in front of your students, only 40% is by mouth. The rest of it is uh, facial expression, gesticulation, but a lot of energy. And you don't fool kids. You can say everything is okay, but if what you're really feeling is not that, you need to be consistent with that message. And that's, of course, our message, which is choosing love over fear. I had a parent call in. I did a parent community night the other night, and I had a parent call in. They were obviously upset, and they said, "What do you think about this mask thing?" And the kids, they have so much. They have to go to school, and they're this is all a new world, and how are you seeing the kids handle this across the country? It's so upsetting, and this and that. And I said, here's what I've seen, because I have worked with schools across the country virtually at this point. I just did my first in person in New Hampshire last week. And I found that the kids are okay. The kids are okay. If the adults are giving them a consistent message, if the adults are confident themselves and not reacting out of fear, if the adults have a positive attitude about what's going on, um, if the adults are secure in themselves, then the kids are okay. The kids are handling it. And so I think it's just a really important thing to remember, that we're modeling in every moment for our children, um, for our communities, how to handle where we are right now in the history of mankind. And also to remember, Kate, I heard this the other day and I loved it. I think it's maybe Thich Nhat Hanh. I'm not sure who originated this idea, but that our emotions, and what we're going through, even what we're going through, is like a season. We started out this whole webinar saying, Kate, you're in California and it's so hot. I'm in Maine and it's so cold. But even though it's freezing here, it's a season, and we're going to move through it. And COVID is a season. We're going to move through it. Our fear is a season, and we're going to move through that. Emotions that you feel, it's really important to be able to identify your emotions. This was one of the big things that came out of my my first in-person visit in New Hampshire with an entire district. They had everyone out on the school lawn, and they were presenting to me what they were doing with Choose Love. But I was able to talk to every student, every teacher. And the big thing that they were saying is, what I took away was taking a moment at the beginning of each class, at the beginning of the day, to think about what you're thinking about, basically, to think about how you're feeling, and to identify those feelings. Because if we don't name it, we can't tame it. And I think that that's a really important thing. If we even think about anger, because fear, by the way, uncertainty, can generate anxiety, can lead to anger. I think maybe that's some of what we're seeing in our country. And anger is like an iceberg. I'm sure a lot of you on here know the anger iceberg. Anger is the tip of the iceberg. Anger is something that we see, but it never happens in a vacuum ever. There's always an underlying feeling, always. And if you can't identify the underlying feeling, you can't manage your anger. So that was really the big takeaway I got from visiting there, was that you have to take a moment, and you really have to have a curriculum that helps you take a moment, unless you know to do it yourself as an educator. What do you think about that, Kate?
Yeah, I think that it's just that is what the name of the movement is. It's choose love, and choosing is one of the key words there. What happens when we take that pause is we drop into the moment, and we drop into that moment of choice. So it's and that was your inspiration right at the beginning, Scarlett, when people were asking you after the death of Jesse, what can I do? What can I do? And you challenge people to choose love, right? So when they felt upset, when they felt any of these emotions such as anger, to choose a loving thought to kind of replace it. So going in and being mindful of that moment where there's a moment of choice. And so I think it's so powerful. And I have to tell you, I've been using it all the time through this
Me
as
too.
my teenagers have returned to school, of just being, being the adult, being the person with the bigger social emotional skill set, and dropping in and making that choice. It's really slowing things down and realizing, wow, I'm actually struggling right now as to how to support my children. So if I'm struggling, where are they at? Right. And so just really challenging myself in that moment to look at, what choice am I wanting them to make? Like, how can, and it's a solution orientated approach. What are some of the solutions? What are some of the suggestions I can come up with for my children? So and the quieter we can get, the more solutions will arise.
That's excellent, Kate. That's an excellent point. I just want to stay here for one moment, because unless we're present in the moment, not thinking about what's happened in the past, not fearing or planning for the future, unless we're present, we are unable to thoughtfully respond to what's happening to us in life. So we find ourselves reacting. And the majority, by the way, of our life is not spent in the present moment. And in the present moment is where life is happening. And it is so important. And I want to address one thing that you said as well. You're talking about, how do I model this for my kids? I'm struggling. So if I'm struggling, what are they feeling? And how do I become the model for them? And I just want to share a personal story that I've been sharing, that I think is relevant to this, exactly what we're talking about. It's a little bit hard to hear, but when I was at the firehouse, that is where all the parents were called to be reunited with their kids that had been evacuated from Sandy Hook. This was December 14th, 2012. And so I'm there. I'm waiting. Obviously, my son is on the list of missing people, long list of missing people. It's still not even I mean, I don't even, this can never happen to you, right? So I'm just waiting for them to find him. And my 12-year-old son texts me. He's in lockdown in 7th grade, in Spanish class, by the way. He says he can't do Spanish because of that. Anyway, he texts me and he says, can I come and wait with you? And I think, well, of course, because when they find Jesse, because they had said that there's still people missing, but they thought they were hiding. And so I said, sure, because when they find Jesse, he's going to want his big brother, and we'll probably go out to dinner. That was my thought pattern. So he comes, he waits for me. Now, by the way, this is like the most chaotic time. I mean, helicopters flying overhead. army men, first responders running all over the place, media, distressed parents, like you can't even imagine. And I have people coming up asking me these tough questions like, did Jesse have any identifying marks on his body, things like that. And all of a sudden I realized, because I practiced being present in my life, I was present with my boys, I knew the value of that. And I was a single mom, I felt like I didn't have enough time with them anyway. So we didn't have a TV. I mean, I didn't want them watching TV when I was there. I wanted, and being present, by the way, is not on the phone. It's actually not even present watching a movie. It's like sitting across from someone. It's looking into their eyes, and it's being present. And when you're present with somebody, it means I care about you. I care about you. Like if I'm talking to you today and I'm distracted, I hold on for a minute. I'm looking at my phone. You're going to be like, wow, she doesn't really care about us. She doesn't really care about this. Presence is caring. And so I realized, so I was present with my boys. We read every night. We thank goodness screens weren't available, because I'm as addicted as anybody else right now. But in the moment, I tried to be present also at the firehouse, because it's not just being present in good times, it's being present in the tough times. And that's what takes courage, because you want to be present in order to choose how you respond, because there's a stimulus that happens in your life. The stimulus is what happens, and right now it's COVID, but it could be anything that happens to you, anything that's ever happened to you. It could be, the tragedy for me was the stimulus, and then there's your response. And the space that Kate is talking about is this space right here, the space that you have to take your personal power back. You can't always choose what happens to you. Well, I would never have chosen the tragedy, right? So here's this thing, we would never have chosen COVID. We would never choose the social unrest that's going on and all of these things. But here's this space in here, and we have to be present in order to choose our response. Otherwise, we're reacting. And so I was present at the firehouse. I knew this. And I looked at JT and I realized in the moment, this is before we had the understanding of whether, what the outcome was, that I was modeling for him in the moment how to thoughtfully respond to difficulty, challenges, roadblocks, pain, and suffering for the rest of his life. How I thoughtfully responded in the moment was going to shape the way that he responded, hopefully, to difficulty for the rest of his life. And knowing that helped me rise to the challenge, be the best person that I could be in the moment, pull in those skills and tools that I had. It doesn't mean that I wasn't authentic. It doesn't mean that I didn't show emotion. It doesn't mean that I wasn't afraid. I was all of those things, but it did help me rise to the occasion. And I think that I'm sharing that because that's where we all are right now. We're at this unprecedented time. We're in the middle of it. And we're looking around and we're realizing, okay, there are eyes on us right now. They're watching. And it's not just here. It's not just what comes out. It's really being authentic in our response. And it is absolutely having the courage to be present and choose how we respond. And presence, your amount of presence equals your amount of caring, to other people, not to you. I mean, when JT walks into the room and I'm on my phone and I have to finish my text and he's asking me a question, I usually finish my text. Okay. Yeah. Hold on. Right. Yeah. And I love him. But to the other person, right? That determines your level of caring. And I love kindness. Kindness is so important, but I think caring takes kindness to the next level, because kindness is something that you can do, but caring really comes from the heart, and it comes from being present in the moment. So, I'm gonna go back, if it's okay. And Kate, you know, please chime in anytime you want. But I was just going to, probably most of you have seen this, um, but I wanted to kind of show how the Choose Love movement started. And it was literally coming home after that tragedy and finding this message on our kitchen chalkboard. This is literally my kitchen. You can tell if you look around the corner. It's I didn't
We
click
don't
up.
have the slides, Scarlett. They came up and then they went again.
Oh, okay. So let me. Sorry about this. Okay, I'm gonna. So yeah, somehow it popped off. Sorry about that. Okay. This is literally my kitchen, and this is the chalkboard on the side of my oven. And you can see the messaging I had in my house anyway. The Abe Lincoln quote, which has been up there for years, it's still up there. People are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. But this is the message that Jesse wrote days before the tragedy: nurturing, healing, love. I actually didn't even see it until after the tragedy. You can see it's like where the height where a 6-year-old would stand. It's phonetically spelled because he was in first grade and just learning to write. But this is really what it helped shape my thoughtful response to the tragedy itself. First of all, I knew that that's where we needed to go to survive and even thrive. And I also knew that if Adam Lanza were able to give and receive nurturing, healing love, the tragedy would never have happened. And I'm saying his name. I don't say his name when media are present, but this is an intimate group. And I think it's really important that we remember that hurting people hurt people, as Kate was saying. And that's so true, even of Adam. If you understood everything that happened to Adam, the neglect and most likely abuse by trusted adults, and bullying and neglect that went on throughout Adam's life, you you wouldn't feel anger for him. You would feel compassion for him, actually, as I do. And so this is what shaped the whole movement. And we did some research along with a doctoral professor who directed the Compassion, Creativity, and Innovation Center at Western Connecticut State University, that was actually funded by the Dalai Lama. Not that research, but the center. And he found that those 3 words are in the definition of compassion across all cultures. And so here's a little bit of a close-up of that message. And we found that when we defined those words, it actually resulted in a really profound formula for choosing love. And this is what is the foundation, really, of everything that we do at the Choose Love movement, is this formula. We encourage the schools across the country that have signed up to break their school years into quarters, and then focus on each of these character values in the 4 quarters, because it is literally a path to flourishing, and a path to, by the way, taking your personal power back in uncertain times, for this time. And it starts with courage, because everything starts with courage. Courage is the most important character value because it underlies all the rest. I think that's a quote by Aristotle as well. Courage is so vitally important. And a lot of times when we talk about courage, we think about big acts of courage. And I can't talk about courage without talking about Jesse's courage. Jesse stood up to the shooter as he came into the classroom. The shooter most likely murdered his teacher, who was standing right by him, and then his gun jammed or ran out of bullets. I don't think we know. And during the short delay, while the shooter reloaded, Jesse directed his friends to run. And he was able to save 9 of his classmates' lives before losing his own. This was right in the middle of it, by the way. His principal and counselor had just been shot right outside of his door. The loudspeaker was on, so everybody heard everything that happened. And so for this act of bravery, Jesse is now on the short list for the Presidential Medal of Honor. It's the highest civilian honor. I talk about that courage because we all have that same capacity for courage. Jesse was a 6-year-old little boy, right? He doesn't have anything that we don't have. And research tells us that courage is like a muscle. We can literally practice it to strengthen it. Now, hopefully none of us will ever be in that situation. I don't want to ever be in that situation. But when I'm talking about courage in the program, it's the courage that we practice every day without knowing it. It's the courage to be kind when someone's not being kind to you. It's the courage to do the right thing when no one's looking. It's the courage to tell the truth when, like, maybe you might think it's easier to not. It's the courage to stand up and face our discomfort and even our fear. This takes courage, and it's something that we practice, but we need to be mindful of practicing it. And we can. This is what we teach in the program. And by the way, not just for kids. This isn't just for kids. This is for us big kids too. And as Kate said, I'm practicing this every day. Think about the courage that it takes. Oh my God, we have so much going on every day. I don't know about you, but I'm bombarded. And I feel sometimes like I'm just rushing from one thing to another. And that's not being present. It takes courage to be present, especially in difficulty. But if you're not present, you're also not thoughtfully responding. We can use courage in so many different ways. And that's why we start with courage, because it takes courage to practice the rest of the formula and each of the character values. It takes courage to be grateful when things aren't going our way. And by the way, that's when gratitude is really important. There's science behind the benefit of practicing all of these things. And we know about gratitude. Oh, I know that gratitude is important, but how often every day do you practice it? Because by the way, it's something that I practice every day, all day long, because gratitude is so vitally important. We have this negative bias that we're wired with. We're wired into our DNA. Our thoughts, we have on average between 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And we know through the latest neuroscience that the vast majority of those thoughts, around 70 to 80%, are negative. That means angry, non-productive, and they don't serve us. That's the majority of our thoughts, by the way, every day as human beings. That's just how we're wired. And over 95% of our thoughts are repetitive. They're the same thoughts we had yesterday, a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, up to 5 years before. So those thoughts that we think every day impact every cell in our body. Every thought leads us towards languishing or towards flourishing. Every thought impacts us on a cellular level and makes up our beliefs, which makes up our perception of our reality. And here's the amazing thing, and this is actually how the movement got started. We have control over our thoughts. So actually, I stood up at Jesse's funeral because everybody was saying, oh my gosh, what can we do? And I said, there is something you can do. We have all of these negative thoughts. You can start thinking about what you think about. That's the start of being present. Just think about what you think about and choose one loving thought over an angry thought. And by doing that, you'll make yourself feel better. I mean, let's think about it. We're all moving towards feeling good. And that's part of the problem with what we see. We want to feel good as human beings. That's our natural propensity, but yet we have a negative bias. But wait a minute, that doesn't make me feel good, those negative thoughts. I want to feel good. So we try to feel good in only one of two ways. And that's based on our awareness and education. We're going to feel good through anger, because anger, doesn't it kind of feel good? I mean, come on, the beginning of it, we get a shot of adrenaline, and I feel a false sense of power. And I tell you what, it kind of feels good. But we know that prolonged anger is as bad for us as smoking between, I've heard different things, but 13 and 2 packs of cigarettes per day. Prolonged anger is bad for us. We're going to do it through bullying. We're going to try to off put our pain and suffering and gain back a little bit of the control that we lost through bullying. We're going to do it through substance abuse. Why do us big kids, why do we abuse substances, and not even abuse it? Why do we use it? I know I have that glass of wine at night because I want to feel good. I feel like I deserve it. I want to ease some of my anxiety, right? That's why I do that. Why do people join gangs and terrorist organizations? Literally, they're looking to belong, to connect. They're looking for love. They're looking to feel good. They're looking to feel a sense of belonging. So we're going to do it in those negative ways, or we're going to do it in positive ways, which means managing our emotions, having healthy connections, being able to call somebody, reach out for help, which is, by the way, how our body is naturally wired to do in hard times. We're gonna do it through positive means, but we have to learn how to do that, and that's what the goal of the Choose Love movement is to help us with those skills and tools. But gratitude is a huge part of that, because even though we're wired to think negatively, right? Gratitude, we can use gratitude. We call it the great mind shifter. We can use it to shift out of that negative thinking pattern when we want. So we're thinking something negative, you feel your thoughts spiral down, and you can literally shift your thoughts because you have control over your thoughts. If you're realizing, whoa, wait a minute, I'm going down a path that I don't necessarily want to go down. If you do, that's fine. And anything that you feel is valid and worthy. Even anger. Anger can be a positive thing. Anger's fine. I mean, every emotion that you feel is fine. But when you're going down a path that you want to switch out of, you can choose to feel gratitude. And there's always something to be grateful for. Like today, it's raining, and I'm grateful because it's conducive to great sleep. The cold is conducive to great sleep. I'm with my family. I'm here for my mom's. I'm in Maine for my mom's birthday. There's always something to be grateful for. And that shifts your mind. And by the way, I have to do it every day, all day long. I use the great mind shifter. So I feel the anxiety coming in. I think I pull. Do you pull from your store of negative thoughts? Well, by the way, we're wired to do that. We know through the latest neuroscience that negative thoughts and memories stick to us like Velcro. Positive ones bounce off us like Teflon. Do you ever pull from your store? When your mind is blank, you kind of go, oh man, that made me so mad, right? Well, no, I don't. I only have so much energy per day. I don't want to spend it rewinding and thinking about something that still makes me angry. Could make me angry when I'm thinking about it. I want to shift. I want to be positive. I want to feel good today. So I'm going to think about something that I'm grateful for. That takes courage. It takes courage, but it also takes awareness. We have to learn how to do that. And that moves us into it. It literally strengthens us because, by the way, remember, happiness doesn't create gratitude. Gratitude literally is a direct path to happiness. So that actually strengthens us. Gratitude strengthens us. We know this neuroscientifically, physically, mentally, and emotionally, to be able to consider forgiveness. And by the way, I got schooled by a group of at-risk youth that we're working with in New Hampshire the other day. It was awesome because I'm talking to them now. These kids don't live at home. They've all experienced a tremendous amount of trauma. And I'm sitting there talking to them about forgiveness, right? And I say, it takes courage to forgive, even especially those that don't care. They don't know any better. They maybe don't even know they hurt you, or they're not sorry. Wow, it takes a lot of courage to cut that cord that attaches you to pain. It doesn't mean you forget. It doesn't mean that you condone. It simply means that you're taking your personal power back. And I got schooled because they said, wait, let's rewind. Because the most important thing is self forgiveness, because we have to forgive ourselves first. And I said, wait a minute, but there's nothing to forgive yourself for. You didn't do anything wrong. And they said, it doesn't matter. We blame ourselves. We blame ourselves for the situation, even if it's not, something that it's not their fault. And but we have to forgive ourselves first. And that's so hard. It's even harder than forgiving other people, is to forgive ourselves. And so that's where we start, forgiving ourselves. That enables us to forgive others. And I love Dr. Edie Egger. I don't know if you all have read her book, The Choice. We actually just started a book club. We're going over all of these incredible life-changing books. This book is going to be our December book club book. I just did a live interview with Dr. Egger. She's actually going to be on the book club with us in December. I hope you'll all join us. I love the way that Dr. Egger, who is a Holocaust survivor, by the way, and she tells a story about how she and her family were rounded up. They got on they were pushed into a cattle car. They didn't know where they were going. And after 3 days, stuffed into this cattle car with only bread and a bucket for waste in the corner, they get off the cattle car and they line up. And of course, Dr. Magdalene, the angel of death, is there. And she said they came up to the line. Her mother was in the middle of them, and her sister was on one side, she was on the other, and they were locked arms as they went through this line, and they approached the angel of death. And the angel of death looked at Edie and she said, "Who is that in the middle of you?" And they thought they were at a work camp. They didn't know why they were there. And Edie said, "That is my mother." And he said, "Okay, your mother's going to go one way and you and your sisters are going to go another." And Edie said she clung to her mother. And Dr. Magdalene said, "No, it's okay. Don't worry. You'll see your mother soon. She's just going to take a shower." And so her mother went one way, Edie and her sister went another way. And they learned that evening from the other prisoners in the camp, "Do you see that smoke? That smoke is your mother." So Edie, to this day, talks about how she has to endure the process of forgiveness, practice forgiveness, even now for herself. When she thinks of it, forgiveness starts with a choice. She made the choice to forgive because she didn't want to be a victim for the rest of her life, but she still has to go through that process of identifying her mother. She says, "If I had just said she was my sister, my mother might be alive today." And so these are the thoughts that are reoccurring in us as well, hopefully not as dramatic. But here's the other thing that Dr. Egger says. She says, we create a prison in our own mind, and we're our own jailer with non-forgiveness, with not forgiving ourselves. We create this prison, and we're our own jailer as well. But what we don't realize, unless we're taught these lessons, is that we also have the key to unlock the prison of our minds that can free us. And our key is in our pocket. We just have to use it. And that key is forgiveness. Wow. So incredible, right? So, so then when we do that, we can move into compassion and action, which has two components. It also takes courage. There's the identifying of another's need, or the empathetic part of compassion. And this is a really important part to talk about today, because this is also a problem for people today. Empathy is when you identify with someone else's pain. But the interesting thing that we've learned in the brain is that empathy lights up the same receptors in our brain as physical pain. Empathy is a painful process. Think about it. A lot of times I have this video that I share, and it shows little clips of Jesse, and it talks about the Sandy Hook tragedy. And a lot of times afterwards, I see people with tears running down their eyes. And when I talk about compassion in action, I say, did you feel empathy for me when you watch that video? And people go, oh yeah. I say, how does it feel? And they go, oh God, it was horrible. My heart still hurts. My tears were streaming down my face. It was a horrible feeling. Well, and it was painful. Well, empathy lights up the same receptors in your brain as physical pain. Here's where this concept of compassion can be really helpful when we understand exactly what it means. Because there is empathy burnout, there is empathy fatigue. We can only feel someone else's pain for so long, and then we have to turn away. But compassion, and by the way, and it's erroneously being called. I hear this concept all the time now in podcasts, in the media. Compassion burnout, compassion fatigue. That is simply not a thing. There's no such thing as compassion burnout or fatigue. There is empathy burnout and fatigue. And I think it's vitally important that we understand the difference, because compassion has two components. There is that empathetic component. Now, empathy is necessary for healthy and meaningful connections. We have to feel someone else, right? We want those mirror neurons to be moving, to be working in order to make that deep and meaningful connection. But compassion has two components. The other component is the action component. That's actually why we draw attention. That's why we say compassion in action, because there's the action component. And science tells us it's in the action that's in thoughtfully responding to that need. It's in the action component where all of the nurturing, healing love that we give out comes back to us. And this wonderful thing that this is all science. We know what we give out, we get back. It's not the reason that we do it, but it's true. I can tell you personally, people ask me, oh my gosh, like you get up on a Saturday morning and you're giving webinars and you're talking to Hawaii at 11 o'clock at night, and you're doing all you're running across the country, you're spending all your time promoting this free program. This is all free on our website, by the way. What is it? Do you get anything out of it? I say, oh my goodness. I was talking to the kids the other day, and I said, my bucket is so full. That's one of the concepts the elementary school educators might understand. It's like filling your bucket. What fills your bucket? What depletes your bucket? I was telling the elementary school in New Hampshire, my bucket is so full. Speaking to you all and giving and receiving so much love. What do you do when your bucket is just overflowing? And they said, get another bucket. It's like, right. I'm going to have to start getting other buckets and pulling them all around me to catch the overflow of all this love that I receive. I can tell you personally that what you give out, you get back in spades, but there's research to back that up as well. There's research to back up everything that I'm saying. So when you have the courage to be grateful, even when things aren't going your way, when you have the courage to forgive, even if the person who hurt you isn't sorry, doesn't care, may not even know, and even more the courage to forgive yourself, because we like to blame ourselves for things, and then the courage to step outside of our own pain and suffering to help other people, then we're choosing love. We're choosing love, and we're making the world a better place. Kate, do you want to? I feel like I've been talking a long time. Do you want to comment on that?
No, I think you said it all. No. And I just want to say though that have heard you speak and I've known the formula, but it's just like it's one of these things, it does seem simple, the words seem simple, but I just want to say to everybody, and some of you maybe have heard this before, but just really working at it continually, it deepens and deepens and deepens. Like that, I just don't tire of hearing Scarlett speak, because now we're in a different time and place. We're in this situation of COVID, and
there's a totally different perspective. You're
yeah,
hearing
it's
words,
very
but
easy
we're
to
in a
feel
different
sorry.
world.
Yeah, yeah, and it's very easy to feel sorry for myself, but this coming back to this discipline of gratitude, and it has been super, super important for me, because it's easy to just see it all through this negative mindset. But the gratitude practice, again, it just sounds so simple. And in many ways, it is a simple practice, but it's profound. Like if we really commit to it, it has a profound effect.
It is profound. And it does bring us back to what unites and connects us all. And I really think, especially in this environment, we need to be mindful that we're all the same as human beings in the want and need to love and be loved. And from the beginning, I have, our brain naturally, uh, when we look at each other, our brain, for our survival, by the way, picks out differences right away in our facial makeup, everything. Our brain does that automatically within the first, I don't know, nanosecond of seeing somebody else. We already do that. I wanted to draw attention to what we have in common, what unites us all, and that is the want and need to love and be loved. It doesn't matter how old you are, what color your skin, what gender, where you live, what religion or non-religion. Nothing matters. We're all, that doesn't matter. What connects us is the want and need to love and be loved. I mean, I'm not saying none of that matters. It all matters. But what I wanted to focus on is the thing that we had in common, and make sure that we all remember that every single day. If you're a human being, you have a want and need to love and be loved. And here's the thing: hatred has to be taught. Little babies are born. And I used to say this about Adam Lanza: there's no mass murder gene. You don't look at a little baby that comes out and say, oh, he's so cute, too bad he has that mass murder gene, right? Adam Lanza was born just like you and I. We all were, wanting to love and be loved. And he was taught. He was cultivated throughout his entire life. The majority of people that harm themselves or harm others, 90% at the time of their death have a diagnosable mental illness. That's not going to surprise anybody on this call. But the majority of that, I believe, can be reduced and prevented by teaching these essential life skills. And a lot of it is connection, learning how to have healthy and meaningful connections, and also being able to really face discomfort and pain and understand that this is what shapes and molds us as human beings, that we can grow through this. And there's literally a name for it. I know that, right now, we're all outside of our comfort zone, all of us. Would we rather be in our comfort zone? I don't know about you, but I would. I mean, I was kicked out 8 years ago, frankly. But COVID has just kicked all of us out of our comfort zones. But when you're out of your comfort zone, you're in your growth zone. There is a silver lining. The silver lining is that there's an opportunity for growth right now. And I think it's all very, we also have to acknowledge that we're grieving. And through my experience in Sandy Hook, I saw the fear around the topic of grief. JT, who was in seventh grade, from seventh grade to 12th grade, he went back to school, obviously, and no one ever asked him about the tragedy. No one ever mentioned Jesse, and no one ever asked him how he was doing, ever. Not even like, hey, how you doing? Which is just kind of a rhetorical question and kind of like our hello. And we don't really expect an answer. And I didn't realize that until 60 Minutes was actually sitting in our living room. And they asked JT this question: did anybody ever acknowledge the tragedy at school? I don't even know why they asked that. I would never have asked that. And he said no. But then that made me remember, he said he would come home almost every day. No one cares about me, Mom. No one cares about me at school. And I would say, JT, like, we're having these meetings with educators all the time. You're given, you're on a special plan. You're given more time for tests. Like, oh my God, they care. What are you talking about? And he'd say, no, they don't. And I'd say, oh my God, JT, I can tell you they care. I just got off the phone with 5 of your teachers. They care. No, they don't. Nothing could ever convince him. And I was on the phone with someone who's also become a dear friend of mine, the president of the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation now, Diane Gray. She's also a partner of ours. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross really, really kind of put the science of grieving into the forefront. And she said, I know exactly why he feels that way. And I said, why? Because I've been trying to figure this out. And she said, it's because no one has had the courage to address his grief. And I was like, wow, you're right. And so when I talked to the school about that, I mean, it was, why haven't you addressed his grief? Well, because we're afraid. If we say, how are you? And he says, I'm not okay, and we don't have the skills and tools, then what do we do? Here's the other thing. We don't want to remind him. And I can tell you one thing. If somebody's been through a terrible tragedy, you will never remind them. We're always thinking about it. And actually, we appreciate when people have the courage to bring it up, because not many people do. So I realized, wow, and this is not in judgment. This is in saying, okay, we need to have education around this, because this is something, especially now, there's so much loss. The whole point of me telling and sharing this story is that we're all grieving right now, all of us. Maybe the loss of a significant other, but you can grieve the loss of a routine. You can grieve the loss of being able to see your friends. Grieve the loss of, as Kate said, that physical touch, the connection. There's so much grief going on right now. Grieving the loss of the future we thought we were going to have, or the loss of this certainty that we thought was there, which, by the way, really wasn't, but we thought that tomorrow was a pretty certain thing. There's so much grief right now. And I think that it's really important that we just be aware of it. We just be aware of it and understand it's really important to have the courage to be with people where they are. And it's not about having the skills and tools. It's not about having the education. It's about having the courage to be present with people where they are. Just sit with them. Sometimes, one of the best things that anybody ever said to me, I can't remember who said this to me. They said, there are no words. So I'm not going to say anything. There are no words. And wow, I was like, whoa, you're right. There are no words. Sometimes I find myself trying to fill the silence, that awkward silence that, when you're facing somebody that's that's in tremendous pain. It's like, what do you say? God, I don't know what to say to that person. You say there are no words, because there are no words that can describe that pain. And so just sitting and being still and silent. It's beautiful. I had a friend who came to the firehouse, and she just shadowed me. She didn't say anything. And that was the most beautiful gift. Wow, what courage. I wouldn't want to be there, frankly. I wouldn't want to be there unless I had to. And she willingly came there and sat with me. She didn't say a word. It was so beautiful. So I just want to throw this out there because it's really important. And by the way, we do have a healthy grieving program in Choose Love that Diane Gray created for us, because I thought, wow, it's really necessary to have this awareness. And then how do we comfort? How do we comfort people who are grieving? Kate, I think you could address that. And I think that it's really important, because that's been a question that I've had a lot. Like, my kids are scared. I'm scared. My kids are scared. We're upset. They hear things on the news. And how do we comfort one another?
Well, I think, like you say, Scarlett, and I just want to add in also, a lot of people are signing off. They're running out of time.
Okay,
But so we will wrap up the call soon, just mindful of everybody's time. But
absolutely.
the thing I want to just add there is just to really acknowledge the pain, that it is difficult, and and it's just allowing that expression of feeling, like, I hate this, or, whatever it is that the kids are saying, that you acknowledge that as a truth. We don't try and plaster over it, band-aid over it with platitudes. Just, yeah, it is hard. And so, there may be no particular solutions at that time, but just acknowledging.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's so funny, Kate. This has been a tremendous conversation, and we had actually, I think, planned it to go another 45 minutes.
Well, we can, but I just want to let you know, a lot of people are signing off,
Okay.
because that, and I agree, an hour on Zoom is plenty.
Okay, sure, sure. I mean, I'll go for as long as anybody wants to go, because I have a lot more slides, but I understand too that it's Saturday, and I'm just so grateful. And you know what? We could even have a series of these events if you all like what you heard and you got something out of it. We can definitely schedule another session. We have a lot more to say. But I think this is a really important conversation. I think it's a healing conversation. Um, and I think that and I'm definitely available. I know that you are. This is being recorded, actually, and so people are able to listen to this later. There are some people that want us to continue. Kate, are you able to
Right.
continue?
Yeah, I'm reading that. So yeah, and Sheila has a good sorry, Shelley has a good point, that it's recorded, so it's available for people to listen to afterwards. If you do need to hop off, and we understand that. And if there's, like Scarlett said, we're happy to stay, but we're also, if you need to leave, that's absolutely fine. And it will be recorded, and we'll make it available for everyone. And yeah, just also, keep adding in your comments what you'd like to hear more about. Holly, you was just saying more about the touch and the options, and any comments you have. Yeah.
Do you want to address that, Kate?
No, let's go through your slides. Let's do what you
Okay.
had set
Um,
up.
so we will just continue. We'll stop to share and to talk. I share this quote because everybody's heard of Oprah Winfrey, and Oprah and I actually have something in common. We believe that every single event in life happens in an opportunity to choose love over fear. And here's the thing, if you see things, I mean, things are going to happen. We know that kids are going to face difficulty, challenges, roadblocks, pain, suffering. Sorry, that's all about what life is. that is actually how we're shaped and molded. And so if you can instill in our children the understanding that when difficulty happens, there are lessons in there for you. So instead of resisting and avoiding, you can turn to those difficulties, be present, and literally ask the question with curiosity, what are the lessons in here for me? How am I going to grow, instead of fearing? Um, so I want to talk a little bit about stress. Um, I think it's really important to understand that, because we know so much about stress. We read so much about stress. We all know that stress is terribly bad for us. And if I ask the question today, are you guys stressed out? Does anybody, what's your level of stress? I bet that it's fairly high for most people. Um, and I think it's really important that we understand that stress is mostly based on an external event that we can't control. So, like COVID, let's use that as an example. COVID is a stressful event that is happening outside of us, hopefully. And we have no control over, other than wearing masks and distancing and things like that. Stress is an external event. Anxiety is our internal event. And for the most part, we can control anxiety. And so I think that it's very important to make that distinction. Um, Anxiety starts here with our thoughts. Our thoughts impact how we feel, which impacts how we behave. And sometimes we stay in an emotion. An emotion, by the way, has a life cycle. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's like a tunnel. And so you can start going down it, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. You have to be able to move through it. The problem happens when you get stuck in the middle. Um, and this is from a great book called Burnout. But when you're going through difficulty, it's great to understand, okay, I'm going through this, but I need to move through it to get to the light at the end of the tunnel. Anyway, I want to share a little bit about stress. This is one of our books that we're going to be covering in our book club. It's called The Upside of Stress. It will put what you know about stress on its head. And here's the thing. We know all of these things on the left hand side of the screen about stress. We know how bad stress is for us in our bodies, on our moods, and our behavior. I mean, we know that most people on this call probably know that when you're stressed out, right, your brain releases cortisol, which causes inflammation in the body, and that inflammation can literally, it can lead to a heart attack and death. So we know that the effects of stress can be death, right? And we know this. But what research has shown us, and this isn't, by the way, just new research. This research has been out for decades. We know what our body also does when it is faced with a stressful event is that it releases oxytocin. Oxytocin is otherwise known as the love hormone or the cuddle hormone, because oxytocin makes us want to reach out for help. Aren't our bodies amazing? So we are faced with a stressful event, and our body releases a hormone that makes us want to reach out to other people and get help. It's fascinating, right? But what oxytocin also does is it reduces inflammation. Wow. Okay, so our body releases cortisol, which is going to help us in case we have to run from a perpetrator for our lives, right? So that increases the inflammation, but our body's also releasing oxytocin that reduces inflammation. So they cancel each other out. So what makes stress bad for us? It's our belief that stress is bad for us. That is what research after research has found. And by the way, this isn't just very recent research. This has been around for a couple of decades, if not more. Here's the reason I think it's not out there more and being reported on, because we've been reporting on how bad stress is for us for so long that I think we're going to have to create a marketing campaign so that we don't have to eat crow. And we can pull in this new research, because it's like, whoops, we've gone down this path. And by the way, I mean, it's not a nefarious path. This is the majority of our research is on how things are bad for us. And that's because of our negative bias. That's what we're focused on, right? So it wasn't done nefariously, but now with the positive psychology coming to the forefront, positive psychology has been around for 80 years, but it's just really in the last couple of decades that it's gained traction with this positive psychology. Now we're doing research on what's good for us and how things can help us, which is really exciting. And this is why we know now that stress in itself is not bad for us. In fact, stress, we want a certain amount of stress. Stress can be actually good for us. So we know, what is stress then? Wait a minute, I'm confused. What is stress? Stress is our body's way of rising to the occasion. That's all stress is. It's getting our body prepared for whatever we're facing. That's why, by the way, we feel pretty much the same when we get on stage to talk to 1,000 people, or when we believe our life is in danger. Pretty interesting, right? This is so interesting. So human beings have a natural propensity. I thought this was very important to share, especially in this time in our history. Human beings have a natural propensity to find hope, exert choice, and make meaning. This comes from this book, The Upside of Stress, and all this wonderful research. This is why the most common effects, these are researched effects of stress in our lives, are strength, growth, and resilience. Let me say that again. The most common effects of stress in our lives are strength, growth, and resilience. Wow. There's actually a label for this, and it's a scientifically proven label. Just like we know PTSD. When I get up in front of mental health professionals and I go, who's ever heard of PTSD? I used to say that, of course, everybody would be like, this is seriously our keynote speaker? She's asking us this stupid question, because everybody's heard of PTSD. Then I say, who's heard of PTG, post-traumatic growth, which, by the way, happens to be a foundation of what the Choose Love movement is built on. People go, then they go, ooh, maybe one person in the first row. And I say, well, that's interesting, because when you Google me after this and you look up and make sure that what I'm telling is accurate, you're going to find that 7% of the population, by the way, this was pre-COVID, 7% of the population suffers from PTSD at one point in their life. But the vast majority of us experience something called post-traumatic growth. That is when we grow through trauma. What did I just say in this slide? Whoops, that I just said. The most common effects of stress in our lives are strength, growth, and resilience. This is post-traumatic growth. When we grow through difficulty, roadblocks, challenges, pain, suffering, all the way up to trauma. And there is a technical term for it. It is researched. It's called post-traumatic growth. And there's so many benefits of growing through difficulty. Literally, it's how we're shaped and molded. But we strengthen relationships, weed out weak ones, gain a new perspective, deepen our spirituality, maybe find a purpose in life. There's so many more, so many benefits, yet nobody's ever heard of it. Why has nobody ever heard of that? It's a thing. There's research behind it. No one's ever heard of it, even in the mental health field. Why? Because of our negative bias, because we're looking for things that might hurt us to know about them so they don't. So it's like we go, wait a minute, what's that thing called? PTSD. Wait, can I have a note card? What is it? What is the definition of that? Okay, PTSD is, all right, let me file that in my brain so that I know about it, I can avoid it, right? I can be, and I'm not saying don't that you don't want to be aware of things that might harm you. You absolutely do. But while you're doing that, your body's going to do that for you anyway. You need to be aware of your negative bias so that you can also look for things that can help you. And I love this quote by Helen Keller. Helen Keller, just to remind you, was 2 years old when she was struck with a disease that left her blind, deaf, and mute. So completely cut off from the world. So she's got a lot of credibility when she says this. Character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through experiences of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, vision cleared, ambition inspired, and success achieved. Wow. So it is through difficulty. It is outside that comfort zone that we grow as human beings. Wow. Life is this wonderful thing that it's given us this tremendous opportunity right now to be able to rise to the occasion and to grow as human beings, to have that post-traumatic growth. And I want to, when I started out knowing I had to get this message, basically Jesse's message of nurturing, healing, love, and the awareness that we can choose love in any situation, circumstance, or interaction. I wanted to get it to the kids. I knew that if Adam Lanza had been able to give and receive love, that the tragedy would never have occurred. And then several years later, I have the program, it's out in schools. I'm in a conference in Connecticut with the chief, I forget what his title is, but it's for it's underperforming schools. And there's a board, Clifford Beers is there, and they're presenting on ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences. And they're talking about how much trauma kids have. And they're talking about how much trauma is coming into the school from the home. And I had this moment, another aha moment, when I thought, I've made a huge mistake. I've made a huge mistake. I shouldn't have started with the schools. I should have started with the parents, because I didn't have these skills and tools. And I know that I contributed to some of the trauma that happened in my home. And I also know, by the way, that I was doing the best that I could do with the skills and tools that I had at that time. So I went back to the drawing board, literally, and created this Choose Love for Home program that is really similar skills and tools, but for parents. Because remember, we have to learn these skills and tools, and we can be adults without them. And by the way, even if you have them, sometimes you have to be reminded about them. I have to be reminded about stuff, believe it or not. And then you have to practice them. That's the second key. It's not enough to know them. You have to use them in your life, and you have to practice them. So we have this Choose Love for Home program, and this is no cost, and it's on our website. And I encourage everyone to log on. And we've doubled down on this through COVID. We've been able to do that. So there are different levels that you can go into. You can go in for the littles. We have this really great program. It's diverse. It's got short videos. You can watch them by yourself, or you can watch them with your kids. It's the same languaging that's being taught in the schools. And then it kind of steps up a notch. And then we have this master class too, that parents have been loving through COVID. They've literally been getting on virtually with each other, forming groups and going through one of the videos per session and then discussing it. And really, I've had all positive feedback. I've had one kind of criticism, but it wasn't really a criticism. One of the parents said, the problem is that in these 15-minute videos, there's so much information that we could discuss it for days. Kind of like I think you're feeling on this call right now. There's a lot. but it's all good and it's all for our benefit. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of these free resources that we have on our website. And people say, oh my God, why are they free? How can you do it for free? Well, this has been something that I've been fighting for day one, because these are called essential life skills. We know that these skills and tools can not only change and transform lives, but we know they can save them. How could we price them out of the market? I don't even really know how somebody can charge for these. I have to get to that maybe, but they're free for as long as we can do it, because they're so powerful. And then we also have Choose Love for Communities. And this is a community program, because, and I always use Livermore as an example of this, because we had a celebration at the launch, and so many people, the mayor, the chief of police were sitting on either side of me. All of these business owners and people in the community were asking the question, how can we be part of the solution? How can we choose love? How can we be involved? And so there is a way, and it's this Choose Love for Communities. And there's a little bit of training. It's pretty simple, and an oath that you take, and then you can literally get this logo that you can hang in your window. And so kids that come into the grocery store or into the doctor's office can say, oh, wow, they choose love. So they understand this languaging. We have doctors that are literally, pediatricians, literally giving our flyers out to every patient, because they want the parents to download this home program. They want the communities to get involved. Really, really important. And of course, athletics is a big part of this too. Athletics is a wonderful place to teach these social and emotional skills, tools, and attitudes, as well as leadership. So we have this specific program for that, and we even have a program for the workplace. Harvard University is doing actually in the moment. It's the longest ever study on human life. And I think they're 85 years into it right now. They literally followed newborn babies all the way into adulthood. When they were 75 years into this study, they found the secret to happiness. And they literally published a white paper. And it's probably not surprising to you that they found the secret to happiness is healthy and meaningful connections and relationships. Here's the thing, we're not born with the skills and tools to do that. We have to learn that. I am saying that over and over because it's just so vitally important. So I'll pause there and see if anybody has any questions, comments. Kate, if you want to add anything.
No, not really. I would like to just have, maybe 5-10 minutes just to open up the mics, and any comments, any thoughts from anybody who's on the call?
I'll go. Like, I'm a stranger. I'm not part of that school district. However, one of my really dear friends did tell me that your work is amazing on both sides. So I'm wondering more about your compassionate touch. I think that's important.
Okay, Holly. Yeah. So I broke it down into, the different ages, because it's sort of relates at different ages. And so with the elementary and the young ones, it's a lot about so going back to what Scarlett was saying, that we need to be taught these social emotional skills. We also need guidance and to be taught healthy and compassionate touch too. So although we may go in for touch, it's like, how is the other person receiving it? How can a teacher or a parent guide the child as they are navigating and learning?
Okay, so can I interrupt and say that this is a person that has a healthy sense of love and is already receiving love? So I guess I would move forward to more of junior high, high school, where it's, what can you do with that person to comfort them, or without invading their space potentially.
Right. So then it becomes that skill set of consent, of how we talk to one another. And so going back just briefly, Holly, to 18 months old, can say to each other, may I touch you? So if they get that, from that early age, by the time they're in high school, they have a really well developed, honed skill. But if they haven't had that, what I did hear from the high schoolers when I did a focus group with high schoolers, teachers, and parents in our community. And one of the things that they shared was that a really common phrase that's used in education is keep your hands to yourself. So that's basically just I think because it's so simple to say, and they feel like they can manage the environment. But so by high school, these high schoolers were saying to me, oh, well, it's kind of too late for me because now I feel inhibited. I don't know how to touch. And I said to those high schools, well, take a look around school and you will see lots of touch going on, but sometimes not always very appropriate. And I think
even a shoulder tap, or you know how to tell them, right?
Yeah. So it's just like, and it sort of takes the school as a whole and not just the high schoolers, because they innately want to reach out and give each other a hug, and often just like putting your hands out and just doing the you don't even necessarily may I hug you, but you can just put your hands out and give the cue, and either somebody moves in or they don't. And throughout all ages that will happen.
And I'm not a teacher, but I still think like a light shoulder tap or something, like even like a shoulder hug,
right,
that could make a huge
it
difference.
makes a huge difference. And we did a video where the high school teachers spoke, and they spoke about ways in which they brought in touch, handshaking every child as they come in, high-fiving everybody, every student, high schooler, as they come into the room, transformed teachers' experiences and their sense of connection, and the students with the teacher too. So absolutely, I totally agree with you. There are
my child I decided to put her in private education from the time she was K through 8th. She went to a Catholic school. It was the best decision for her. Her older brother has autism, a moderate to severe amount. I wanted her to have friends that she would always be able to rely on. But all of these lessons were a part of her Catholic education, so we were lucky. She chose to go to public high school on her own. Like, she didn't know anyone. She's like, boom, she's going to go on to college this year. She's incredibly successful. So, anyway.
Yeah, and Holly,
I'm grateful that she had those extensive, because those life learning lessons, those were part of her curriculum. They would get awards for, who was the most.
Totally.
Ever.
And Lisa's put up there some in the chat, which is helpful, is where you can access all the videos that I did on the curriculum. And so you can go and click on the YouTube button on the Choose Love website, and you'll see them all. So
thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
And then, like, on a weird side note, my mom's last name was McKinnon. That was not
really.
So, it's funny. Okay, thank you so much.
I like the serendipity
that you said to me, Kate, was, and I'll never forget it. It's so important that kids, that teachers understand that how important touch is, because now teachers are afraid of touch, and that they say, when a child needs consoling, may I touch you? And a child can say yes, and it might be the only compassionate touch they've ever felt. And that's how they know the difference. That's how they know what it feels like. But then also they can say no. And it may be the first time that they realize that they can have boundaries and that they can say that and it would be respected. It was like that. I don't know, Kate, that blew my mind. And it's such a simple thing, but it's so phenomenally important. I do want to shout out to somebody very, very special I didn't realize had joined us, and that is Lisa Mckenzie. Lisa Mckenzie is a huge part of Choose Love. She is an ambassador in California, but she also helped for the last, 8 months to upgrade our curriculum that had already been throughout the country. But we had this incredible, first of all, we're so incredibly thankful to be able to have someone with Lisa's credentials helping us. And Lisa and also Kim Harrison, who's another ambassador and educator in California, actually were able to thoughtfully respond to what was happening in our world. I don't know. I think we're probably social and emotional learning program that's been able to readjust in a very big way to where we are now. I always thought, like programming that was written 20 years ago, how could you even use it now? Because it's a completely different world. But if you want to just share a little bit, you've been so instrumental in this and your credentials are so amazing. If maybe you want to share a little bit in this group, you're also in California.
Yes. Hi, Scarlett. Thank you. I can never hear you enough. I will share a little bit because I also connected with Livermore. I had gone to the school district a couple of times and sat on a panel because after Scarlett helped the city get the program in place, they had questions and they wanted to know a little bit more, and they still use it. And I met with the community group who was doing it as a community as well and trying to help parents and they ran a parenting group. What I can tell you mostly is that I met Scarlett shortly after the curriculum started as a pilot program, and I taught it, and it made a world of difference in our school. And I teach at the poorest, the highest level of suspensions, lowest level of academic schools in South Sacramento. And so taking this risk, my principal had asked me to put a U-turn in the school to prison pipeline. I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? And this helped it. I am still in touch with my kids who are now in high school, who are making good choices and still choosing love. And it has been an honor and a pleasure to take what I've learned, because I've taught it kinder through 6th grade, done a couple of the high school lessons for practice because I felt like I needed to know it. But it is the most life-changing, I'm going to cry because I do every time too, Scarlett. It is the most life-changing formula that you could ever use. And like Scarlett was saying earlier, we know it. I mean, when Kim and I went back and wrote the curriculum, rewrote, updated and added the literature, that formula and Jesse's 3 words were at the forefront of everything we did all day long. But you know what? I still have to practice it. And once in a while, my husband will say to me, is that choosing love? So I highly encourage you, even just for yourself, if you're not teaching, the home program is wonderful. Just for you, get on and see what's offered because it is nonstop. Scarlett is out there 24/7. I don't think she ever sleeps. There are times that on my phone, I'm getting a text at like 2, which means it's 5 her time, AM I'm talking about. And then another one at like 2 her time, which is 11 my time. That I can't, I mean, I'm again, I have no words to say. I wasn't expecting to say anything. I just like to puff on and hear as much as I can. But it's amazing and it's incredible. And Scarlett is the real deal. She has devoted every minute, every waking moment, and I'm pretty sure most of her sleeping moments to getting this out in the world. And we truly do know that it's the only solution for everything. So that's what I want to say. I mean, it's the real deal. Kate, I reached out to Kate and said, would you do some of your Healthy Compassionate Touch for our kids for the Brave New World? And she said, sure, and renamed it Healthy Compassionate Connection because we can't touch. And it is amazing. My teachers will say to me, I felt like she was touching me though. So I mean, please, just, I can't tell you enough. It's a gift. It's truly, truly a gift. And so are you, Scarlett. And so are you, Kate. You two are absolutely amazing.
Lisa, thank you. You're a gift. You've been a gift to us from the very beginning. You did fill in for me also when I was sick. I've only been sick twice and not been able to make events in the past 8 years, and that was a big one. And I thank you so much for you just jumped up and said, I'll do it. Thank you. But will you also talk about how you were able, and this was your idea, to thoughtfully respond to what was happening? You had already started including kind of some feedback and deepening the lessons, but then COVID hit. This was while you had already started, then COVID hit, then the social unrest hit, and the equity and the inclusion came to the forefront, thankfully. And can you talk about how you were able, just in the middle of everything that you were doing, to weave in a thoughtful response to what's going on in our world?
Sure. Kim and I, Kim Harrison, who's the other gal, and she's Southern California and I'm Northern California. We really took a look at what are we going to do? How are we going to deal with these kids who aren't in school? I know for a fact my students they already came from homes that were traumatic, and most of them not really wanted in the home. And now they're stuck in a home with people who don't want them in the home. Many of them had been abused or foster, and now they're stuck there, where school was often their safe place to be. So we stepped back and said, how are we going to get to these kids when school starts, regardless of if it's some sort of hybrid model or distance learning? And so we literally did some research about what kids need. Back in the master's program days, when you do your review of literature and everything, we did that to figure out what do kids need to be able to return to school, however it looks, and be safe. And that's how we came up with the Brave New World. We incorporated literature. We looked at not just COVID, we looked at the social unrest, because as we're writing the COVID piece, the Brave New World, then all of the social unrest happened. And we decided, okay, we have to address this too. We can pretend it's not happening, but choose love is never anti anything. And so we decided, okay, so let's go ahead, Scarlett, what's that?
For everything, right?
Yes. Yeah, for everything. We're not anti-bullying. We're not anti-racism. We can't be, because the minute you're anti, I go back to what Scarlett says all the time. We've had a war on everything, right? And are we still having that war? Because wars don't work. So we decided to take this view and teach kids developmentally through literature and conversation. We scripted questions so teachers didn't have to try to create it on their own if they didn't know, because it's not something we're taught in our college programs to teach. We wrote the lessons about how to be loving and inclusive and how we're all the same underneath. And we did it developmentally. So the literature component is really huge. We started that in the courage unit anyway, but it was just about being inclusive and diverse. So when the whole social unrest thing happened, we're like, oh, we need to beef this up. We need to dig a little deeper so that kids can it's not about tolerance. It's about full on accepting that you are just like me. And some of our mindfulness techniques that we put in there were wishing others well, looking at somebody different from you and saying, just like me, that person wants to be loved. Just like me, that person has been hurt. Just like me, that person feels sad sometimes. And just having kids say those things out loud, and adults, you start to understand that we are more alike than we are different. And we make it a lot more explicit as we go through the curriculum. We do the gratitude for acceptance, the gratitude for diversity. And it starts with the whole world, for nature, for the earth, for my next door neighbor, for people who look different than me. And then it's the forgiveness. You have to be able to forgive yourself before you can forgive somebody else. So we work on self-forgiveness. And then we look at forgiveness of others. And that's pretty deep, because if you think of the the people today who have been harmed, who do not have the privilege that many of us have, there's a lot of forgiveness that needs to happen on their part to be okay with who they are right now. And that was tough. We think we did a pretty good job on that, but it's never going to be good enough. I always feel like there's more. Every time I look at something else, I'm like, we should have included that too. But we'll keep updating.
Make notes, make notes.
Yeah, I do. Even through your talk today. But then the compassion and action part is where it all comes together. The whole thing comes together, that you have to be able to have the compassion for somebody else, no matter how different they are from you, to be able to reach out to that person, to step aside from your own pain and suffering and reach out to that person and be there for them. So again, I go back to, it's not anti everything. It's pro everything. We keep coming back to hurt people hurt people. That's one of the things that we teach throughout. And so we actually have a few lessons in there that teach kids, if somebody says something hurtful to you, what must be happening inside of them? And that's hard, especially, it's hard for us. I mean, I'm not always, somebody will say something and what happens? We go right to the amygdala, we go right to the negativity bias. They mean something bad toward me. We never think, oh, he must be having a hard day, right? Right? Comes to Scarlett. So we teach that to kids. And it's been life-changing for me to be able to do this. I feel like I've come full circle in my career. I've always wanted to prevent kids from hurt and harm, and we can't prevent them from that, but we can certainly teach them to live better, more loving, caring lives and have better connections. And I can tell you that I don't have the statistics from what I've done at my school, but you feel it on the campus. They miss me terribly because I was that, I mean Choose Love was that glue that held us together. Now everybody's scattered. So I pop in to classes from time to time. I'm not even working there anymore. I pop in and I do lessons. I'm like, can I practice my Choose Love lesson with you? Because I feel like if I wrote it, I need to be able to teach it. And that was the goal. So I think that's it. Anything else, Scarlett? Does that answer your question?
Well, I love that. I love that so much. And I think you brought up a really good point, Lisa. And that is that these skills and tools are just as important for us as big kids as they are for the little kids. And that it is a constant practice. And it's worth it, right? It's
Absolutely.
so worth it because it can change your life. It changed mine. You said it changed yours, but you do it every day. And we remind each other. And like you said, you were taking notes. You've heard me speak 100 times, but there's always something it's a different day. And so it's hitting you a different way and you're hearing different things. But I think it's really important and it needs to be a consistent message. I mean, here's the bottom line. We are responsible for our children. And I mean, before I would say, yeah, I'm responsible for my 2 kids. Their names are Jesse and JT, and those are my responsibility. That's it. And they're enough because they're a handful. But I realized through my tragedy is that, and I really did learn this, we have to take responsibility for what's going on in our world right now. If we don't, then it's going to continue. And I think for too long, we've thought that our leaders, our big leaders, were going to fix things. And we waited for them. But by the way, if they could have, they would have. It actually takes everyone. That's why it's really important for even if you drill down to a school, it's important that Choose Love is embraced as a whole school. Because when it's embraced, then it becomes a part of the culture. And we even know, studying violence in schools, that the culture is the most important part of reducing and preventing an attack. Because when you have a loving, connected, kind culture, that reduces and prevents the grievance that is the starting point from ever happening. Or if one does, because they do, you give not just the educators, but the students as well, the skills and tools they need to manage that grievance before it escalates. So in every aspect, we need to provide our kids, fortify our kids with these skills and tools that are going to help them move through their life, the difficult, move through it, to grow through it, so that they can strengthen themselves to get ready for the next thing, right? Life challenges us, and that's okay, because that's how we grow through challenge. Even our cells need to be challenged a little bit, stressed a little bit in order to grow. So does our whole organism, and that's okay. It's the way life is. But there are these essential life skills that we know kids need in order to do that, and us big kids too. And by the way, it's never too late. If you're thinking, oh well, it is what it is, I am who I am, I've gotten by this far, doing okay, and so I'm just going to muddle through it. You don't have to. You can, as you said, Lisa, go onto the website, download this program for communities, look at the oath, start practicing, because you can turn your life around. We all want to flourish, and this is a direct path to flourishing. What do you want in your life? What do you want? You want to live your life with no regrets, right? Okay, well, the way to do that, I can tell you, is to be present with the ones that you love, looking at them in their eyes. That's the way to live your life with the fewest regrets, I know. And then you want to have meaning and purpose. How do you find meaning in your life? How do you find meaning? Well, it really starts at the forgiveness point, right? It starts with having the courage to be present through difficulty and finding meaning in that difficulty. And how do you find, well, then how do I find a purpose? That's through, that's through being there for other people. It's really through service, compassion in action. That's how we find meaning and purpose in our lives. And that's how we get to flourishing. And that's what we want for our kids, is what we want for ourselves. And this is a way to do it. And so thank you so much, Lisa, so much for sharing with us. I love, you're like an added bonus. Oh, this is so great. You really have done such a service to the Choose Love movement and to the world through your efforts, and Kim Harrison's efforts. Big shout out to Kim as well, and Sarah Obachowski, and so many other people that have worked on this. They've volunteered months, years of their life to help with this, because they believe so much in their heart and the importance of it. Thank you so much. And Kate as well. Kate, oh my gosh, you've been with me from the very beginning, Kate. Cranial sacral, since Wayne Dyer purchased me a session with Kate from the personally and professionally for 7 years now. And Kate has been instrumental in my personal healing, and is to this day. Kate and I just had a session, yesterday? Oh, yeah. Yesterday. We had a distance session, and Kate has been instrumental in my personal healing, and really the reason that I'm able to thoughtfully respond. One of the reasons, self-care, respond with love. But I just want to thank you and honor you, Kate, as well. And you love your community so much. You helped organize this, and you're on here today on a Saturday. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bob, and thank you, everyone that showed up today. Choose love.
Thank you, Bob. Bob, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I really wanted to thank you, Kate and Scarlett and Lisa, for everything you had to say. And I think this is very impactful. And some of you may know that I'm on the council, and I recently initiated an equity and inclusion subcommittee of the council, and we have a working group. And part of what we're trying to do there is not only hear everybody's stories, which are pretty, emotional, and they really have an impact. Uh, One of the other things we want to do is provide everybody who's on the working group. And we started off thinking we might get 18 people, 50 applied. And so we changed how we were thinking about this because we couldn't start off excluding 2/3 of the people who wanted to be on it. So we're dealing with all 50 people, and we've got topics. But amongst all of the group, we wanted to have some kind of common, education or thought process. And so I really thank you again for including me in this. And I think this is something that we need to incorporate in the with the equity and inclusion working group. One of the things that we realized, one of the topics, of course, was what's our culture and how do we represent it in the community? And then the other part of it is reaching and inspiring youth. And then we have to coordinate with the school district. And then we also realize, just as you were talking today, that it's also in the home. So this whole thing of how do we reach people early enough so that they do, as you were saying, choose love and then welcome everybody. So this is something we're going to be tackling. It's going to be, I believe, a permanent advisory group to the council. And I think what what we've heard today is an important element. And Kate, I can be in touch with you in particular as to how can we incorporate this as we go forward on the equity and inclusion. So thank you so much. I've really appreciated being included in this.
Thank you so much.
Bob, I would volunteer to address your equity and inclusion group anytime that you would like me to jump on and go through what we have to offer. We have a prenatal program. We have infant toddler. It's really important to get to kids early, you're right, because 85%, it's not saying that us big kids through neuroplasticity can't also learn and grow. But I think that it's really important to look at this as something for everyone and to include everyone, as you said. So we just honor you and thank you for your leadership. Thank you so much for being on here today and for sharing. And Kate and I know I'm speaking for Kate, but we definitely want to be included and help in any way that we can.
And I think your time is very valuable. And so I was thinking that in addition, we have the city-sponsored equity and inclusion subcommittee. The school district has its own effort, and I think that all of the people that are interested in the school district's efforts as well as the city, we could arrange a larger group to make good use of your time. So I'll reach out to Kelly Bowers and the
We have
others.
Philomena on the call, actually. I just saw Philomena join us. So.
Oh, hi, Philomena.
Good morning, I'm here. And
Okay,
that would be
so
great.
I think,
but Scarlett's already reached out. You are so amazing. I just got to say, I joined late, but I feel the goodness already.
I feel your goodness. Thank you.
Yeah,
so anyway,
recorded
thank
it
you
as
for
well.
including me. I'll end my comments at that, and there's something we can do going forward, and we'll figure it out.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we recorded the call, Philomena, as well. So yeah, you didn't miss any. We can catch up. Yeah. So thank you everyone and all of you hanging in to the end here. I know it's a long time to be on Zoom, but as you can tell, there's passion here and real commitment to seeing how we can make changes. And I think you have a final slide, Scarlett. So do reach out to either one of us. We would love to. I know Scarlett's very committed to doing whatever she can to support Livermore as we're moving forwards. So we'll leave the final slide up that has Right, Scott, I think it does have.
I do. We've got training online. We have obviously webinars like this, podcasts, blogs, newsletters, daily dose of love, which is how schools, homes, and communities are choosing love all across the country. It's one of the favorite resources. So please go on and sign up for that. I told you this was a direct path to flourishing. There it is, using the formula. And of course, so important to have a lot of fun. Your homework there, you can't get out of here with a little bit of homework. You've already showed your commitment staying on for over 2 hours, but your homework is to practice being present. Practice being present. Pull your thoughts in to where you are right now. Right now, we're all on this webinar. We're safe, and we're together and we're learning. That's optimum. And I want you to be present to recognize the micro moments of joy that are happening every single day. They happen every single day, regardless of what's going on in your life. But for the most part, we're too distracted, too busy to recognize them. So your homework is to be present in the moment, recognize and savor those micro moments of joy. They're not huge. They're like sitting down to a cup of coffee and just really tasting it and enjoying it. They're like looking at the last rose of summer, which I saw the other day, and not just going, ooh, that's nice, but taking it, putting it in a vase and enjoying it for a few days inside. I'd love for you to do that and share if you can. Thank you. Thank you all for being one of the first to join the movement to choose love. And I'm going to leave you with anthropologist Margaret Mead's quote, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. You all are that small group of thoughtful, committed citizens. We can change the world together. It starts at an epicenter and moves out. You've already started." And so here is our contact information. That's Kate's email and my email. Feel free to reach out to us, and then also follow us on social media. Of course, we're there as well. And I just want to, there's our website. All of our resources are available at no cost on our website. I encourage you all to check it out. We are a movement. We're spread by word of mouth. And by the way, since Livermore made the decision to choose love, we're now being taught in every state. In fact, in a handful of states, we're the most taught SEL program, and over 100 countries. So how cool is that? Word of mouth is still the most powerful way to spread a message. Thank you so much for the honor of spending your Saturday with me. And I love you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.